Hey, everybody, welcome to the Debrief. I'm Devin Dwyer. Well, Congress has reached a deal to avoid a government shutdown, but will it hold? We have the latest from the White House coming up, plus wicked weather now slamming the upper Midwest, sliding into the east. How bad will it get? We've got a live report from Philadelphia. And teachers are on the strike for a second straight day in Denver. What's going on in those classrooms in Colorado? All that and more coming up after your headlines.
And the torpedoes.
Full speed ahead. A retired astronaut now has his sights set on climbing Capitol Hill. Mark Kelly says he's jumping into the race to finish the term of late Arizona Senator John McCain. He's a top Democrat to challenge Senator Martha McSally, who was appointed to the seat late last year.
At least 17 people are dead and 4 more are hurt after a fire ripped through a hotel in India today. It was in central New Delhi, and officials say the 5-story building had a makeshift 6th floor added on, built out of fiberglass.
3 soldiers are hurt after a parachuting accident early this morning at a base in Florida. They were taking part in what the military calls airborne operations at Homestead Air Reserve Base. Fortnite has a new competitor in the video game world. Electronic Arts now says its new Fortnite-like game called Apex Legends has now about 25 million players.
Heisman Trophy winner Kyler Murray has chosen football over baseball. He says he's fully committed to becoming a quarterback. It comes 8 months after he was selected by the Oakland A's in the baseball draft.
Well, a blast of winter weather is making for an ugly Tuesday in many parts of the country. 31 states are facing snow, ice, flood, and cold warnings right now. We go to our Eva Pilgrim. She's up in Philadelphia on the road this morning. Eva, how bad is it out there right now?
Well, right now here in Philly, we're mostly seeing kind of a mix of things. We saw some hail just a bit ago. Right now, it more looks like a slush. I'm looking at the windshield to see if I can gauge how thick it is. It's more liquidy. It's somewhere between rain and sleet. So what's coming from the sky, the precipitation is sort of changing, and that's part of why they've taken a lot of these precautions, asking people to be careful. A lot of the schools are off today. They were canceled. There's a snow day for the kids. The speeds on the interstates have been lowered to 45. The speeds on the bridges have been lowered to 35. And of course, they've banned anything that could slide on the road. So no cars pulling empty trailers, no double trailers pulled, no RVs, no motorcycles, those kinds of things. Anything they can do to sort of make sure that the cars that are driving are stable and aren't going to slide around quite as much. And that's sort of the big thing is a watch and say. I know in New York right now you guys are seeing snow, and we're actually going to be driving in this car that way to kind of see what the weather looks like as we head that direction for tonight. But, you know, that's the concern. And what is this going to look like as people go home in the evening commute, trying to keep the traffic on the roads to a minimum so no one gets hurt?
Yeah, and of course, watching those temperatures as they dip back below freezing, ice, that water turning to ice on the roads. Eva Pilgrim, stay safe out there in Philly. Thanks so much. Well, our Alex Perez is over in Chicago, one of the hardest hit airports in this winter storm this week. Alex, you're looking closely at the arrival and departure boards there in Chicago's O'Hare Airport. How bad is it? Chicagoans are used to bad winter weather, but this one seems to be snarling things a bit there.
It is snarling things, Devin. This is a widespread storm, so there are a lot of airports in its path, and of course that's creating a lot of problems. Take a look at the boards here at O'Hare. Canceled, canceled, canceled. You can see in big red letters there next to some of the flights, lots of cancellations here, more than 1,800 cancellations so far across the country. And I want to show you across the way here. We're going to shoot outside, and you can see those trees in the distance. See that kind of white surrounding the branches, well, that's actually ice. They're encased in ice. And I want to show you some video of what it looks like other parts of the city. A lot of people woke up this morning here in Chicago to find that there was an ice glaze everywhere, on sidewalks, on cars that had been sitting outside, even on those iconic lions outside the Chicago Art Institute. And that, of course, is creating a lot of problems. Just trying to get around when everything beneath you is slippery makes it difficult. Luckily, the city has been out through the night, salting streets here. Of course, we're no strangers to this kind of weather. And because of that, traffic is moving. The airport is operational. Flights are coming in and out. But those delays and cancellations are creating headaches across the country for a lot of people. As Eva mentioned there, the problem with the storm is that it ranges everywhere from snow to rain and sleet, depending on where you are. And that's creating a big headache for a lot of people. Devin?
Yeah, Alex, so much for that Groundhog Day prediction for an early spring. I think we're in for some misery this week out there. Alex Perez for us. Thanks so much. And, you know, it's not just the East and the Midwest, but the West Coast getting walloped by snow this week. They're measuring it in feet out there. Our Will Carr is in Mount Hood, Oregon, and filed this report. Hey, Will.
Good morning, Devin. Snow is continuing to pound the Pacific Northwest. You can see that we have at least 2 to 3 feet of this light, fluffy snow right here. It has been coming down so much recently that when we were driving overnight, we didn't even realize that this was a car. You can see just how much snow has pounded down onto this car. Residents have been trying to dig out. This is the passenger side mirror, just to give you an understanding of how much snow there is on top of this car. There has been so much over the past week. Seattle has had 4 snowstorms in just the past 7 days. On Monday, SeaTac was crippled. Thousands of passengers had their flights either canceled or delayed. We were actually trying to make our way up to Seattle from Los Angeles and had our flights canceled over and over again. All of this snow and ice has also created some very dangerous situations on the interstates, the highways, and the roads all across this region. We're expecting a lot more snow and rain up and down the West Coast in the coming days. Devin.
All right, Will Carr, thanks for us for that out in Oregon. Ginger Z, our chief meteorologist, has the forecast for the country. Hey, Ginger.
Thank you, Devin. Let's go ahead and talk about these headlines because there are so many to get to. So how about we get into the winter storm for the West Coast, because there's just been several, 4 actually for Seattle itself. 20.2 inches of snow, making it the snowiest month in 50 years. Big numbers coming out of there, and it's not over. I mean, more snow for the west, but also we've got a storm we're watching in the east. Do you see that lion, the famous lion there along Michigan Avenue in Chicago from the Art Institute? Well, it got some ice hanging on it. Close to a ½ inch of ice was actually reported at O'Hare Airport. Fortunately, it seems they've treated the roads well and they're doing well with this ice, but I don't know that that's going to be the case as all of the storm moves east. You had flood concerns and dangers in Arkansas. Nearly a ½ foot of rain fell with this storm. So you've got schools closed there this morning. What you see there is actually a school official carrying a young lady to her home to make sure she gets home safely. That's what they had to do because there was that much rain. And that's all with the cold front part of this. Well, it was the warm, now the cold front. So there's more flood watches in place that include Cleveland, Knoxville, Tennessee, and parts of Kentucky, right? But look into New England, Wisconsin, northern Michigan. We're all under winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories closer to the coast. Why isn't an advisory here? Well, I think a lot of folks are going to start to see frozen precipitation through the day, and then that is going to quickly transition later this afternoon and evening to rain. And so if you stop the clock there at 5 p.m., New York City has just changed to rain. And so even if you get that frozen precip and you have either 1 inch to 2 inches, maybe some places 3 inches of snow and then a little bit of sleet or freezing rain on top of it, it's crunchy, and then the rain takes care of it, especially along the coast, right? So if you're inland and if you're north and west of the coast, I think that's where you end up seeing some of the accumulation, at least try to stick. But this is a warm front that's going to lift through, and so here's what we think is left behind. If you're looking for snow and big snow, you have to go all the way up into the mountains in New England. Devin.
Hey, thanks, Ginger. A gnarly Tuesday out there. Hope you're staying warm. Well, here in Washington, there's a cautious sense of optimism that Congress may have reached a deal to avoid a government shutdown just 3 days from now. Republican leader Mitch McConnell just took to the floor of the Senate to say he's going to put the deal up for a vote. Here it is.
I know I speak for members on both sides of the aisle when I say we are grateful to our colleagues on the Appropriations Committee for their leadership. We're eager to see them complete this work. As we speak, our colleagues are working hard to produce a legislative text. I look forward to reviewing the full text as soon as possible and hope the Senate can act on this legislation in short order.
The big question, though, is does it have the backing of the President of the United States? Our Karen Travers is over at the White House. She's been talking to White House officials this morning. Karen, so tell us what's in the deal and what are you hearing about whether the president will support it?
Yeah, that was euphoria there from the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Devin, talking about this agreement that was reached in principle last night between the congressional negotiators. And there's optimism on Capitol Hill. It may not sound like it there from Mitch McConnell, but there is optimism that a big hurdle has been crossed and they can avoid a government shutdown. But Devin, stop me if you've heard this one before. Right now, all eyes are on President Trump and a lot of questions about what he will support. Will he agree to this deal? Will he sign it? Or is he going to leave a lot of drama and suspense ahead of the deadline? This deal, according to sources, would put $1.375 billion for border fencing and security. That's about 55 miles of new structure. Devin, the president, of course, for months has been saying he wants $5.7 billion. And this is far short of the 200 miles that he would like to see fencing or structures built along the U.S.-Mexico border. So the question is he going to go along with this? And last night at a rally in El Paso, Texas, right there on the border, the president really didn't give any hints as to what he was going to do. But Devin, remember, back in December, there was an agreement. There was bipartisan support. That deal actually had a better option for the president, more money that would have been put toward more fencing, and he rejected it. That's what led to the shutdown.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they say today. The president seems inclined perhaps to take a pass on the shutdown, maybe looking at executive action, maybe that a national emergency is still on the table. Karen, but you talked a little bit about the president's trip to Texas last night. He got back just before 3 o'clock this morning from those dueling rallies down there. Beto O'Rourke, former congressman from El Paso, holding a rally outside. Our Cecilia Vega was there. I think she put it best. This was like looking at two alternate realities when it comes to border security, the message from the two.
The Trump campaign couldn't have teed this up any better for Beto O'Rourke. He's the former congressman. That's his hometown, El Paso, Texas. And he is considering running for president, running for the Democratic nomination. So last night we had President Trump on one side of the screen, Beto O'Rourke on the other. Here's a little bit of what they each had to say.
Whether it was those... Safety is the birthright of every American, which is why we must finish the wall. It's happening. Because walls are not immoral, as it was said. I spoke to people that have been here a long time. They said when that wall went up, it's a whole different ball game. Is that a correct statement? Whole different ball game.
Walls do not make us safer. Walls will require us to take someone's property, their house, their farm, their ranch, to build a wall at a time of record low northbound apprehensions, at a time that El Paso is not the outlier in the cities of the border. In fact, if you look at McAllen, if you look at San Diego, if you look at all points in between, the U.S. cities of the U.S.-Mexico border are far safer than the U.S. cities deeper in the interior of the United States of America.
And Devin, no surprise, Beto O'Rourke has very different views on a border wall than President Trump. But there was also comments yesterday from the Republican mayor of El Paso, Texas, also pushing back on what the president would like to do. And the president's notion that a border wall there dropped crime rates. You know, the president talked about this in his State of the Union when he said that there were very high rates of violent crime in El Paso. Then a wall was built and crime dropped. When actually fact checks and numbers show that those crime rates were falling before the wall was built. Devin, if you're Beto O'Rourke and you want to cut through with a very large Democratic field, what a perfect opportunity there to go after the president, go one-on-one, get in the spotlight at the president's first rally of 2019 and draw a contrast like that.
Yeah, we'll see what Beto O'Rourke does in terms of the 2020 presidential race. Long rumored contender. Will he get in? Won't he? Karen, I know you'll be following it. And thanks for your reporting from the White House today, Karen Travers, for us there. Let's go to Denver now, where teachers, public school teachers there, are striking for a second day, demanding higher wages. It's the first time those teachers have gone on strike in 25 years. Micah Smith from our affiliate KMGH is live for us in Denver. Micah, great to see you again today. So Remind us how many teachers are on strike right now, and what about those reports you've been seeing about chaos in some of these classrooms and schools that have been kept open?
Devin, where I am, there are about 100 teachers that are dancing, shouting, and picketing. But according to the Teachers Union, there are about 3,700 educators participating in strike activities. To give you an idea of what that means, that's 86% of Denver teachers. I want to walk into the crowd just a little bit so you can get an idea of how large this crowd is. You may be wondering, with all these educators out here, what's going on in the classroom? Well, we actually got some video from inside of East High School, very close to where I'm standing, showing chaos. Students walked out of class, flooded into the hallways, and started having an impromptu party by their lockers. We have asked Denver Public Schools what's up with that. We're waiting for a response from them.
Impromptu party in the hallways is quite something, and we know they've had trouble getting substitutes to fill some of those classrooms. You've been talking to some teachers, and in fact, I think you have some nearby there. Give us a sense of how they're feeling. How long do they think this is going to go on?
Devin, they say as long as it takes. I want to go ahead and bring in teacher Charlie Gorey. Charlie teaches English. Charlie, tell me, why are you personally on strike?
So I've been a teacher for 14 years. I have a master's degree. About 3 years ago, I realized that I was not going to be able to have my own children. I wouldn't be able to afford to do it. I'm physically capable, but don't have the money to be able to actually raise a family in Denver. So I started doing foster care, and one of the things that I would say is it allows me, because of cost of living in Denver, because of Medicaid stipends, on a teacher's salary, I would have to pay $1,200 out of pocket every month if I had a family, and I'd also have to cover daycare. And on my current salary, that's just not within the realm of possibility. So yesterday I said goodbye to my 5th foster child. And so as a woman who wants to be a mother, I basically have to sacrifice my own dreams. I love being a foster parent. I would really like to have my own children, but it's just not a reality for me. I won't be able to do it with the current salary.
Charlie, a lot at stake with this strike today. Teachers will be heading back to the negotiation table with the school district within an hour. What are you hoping happens within the first few hours of negotiations?
I would really like it if Susana Cordova would decide that teachers are worth investing in a real sustainable way. We give weekends, we give our lives, we give our commutes, we give everything up so that we can work in Denver Public Schools for our kids. And it would be really nice to be able to get a raise without having to jump through 1,000 hoops, because we already work really, really hard for this community. And so I'd like it if she would agree to our bargaining schedule that is similar to every other district in the area. Right now, we have to do everything within our power, pay thousands of dollars for education in order just to get a marginal raise. And it's not fair and it's not sustainable. And this would be, if we don't get a significant raise, this will be my last year in Denver Public Schools, and I will move back home to Montana where I can actually afford to have a family.
Last question for you. This is a part of a national conversation. Have you been inspired by teacher strikes across the country?
I really have. I think that as a country, we really are finally fighting for what is right for our kids and our communities. I think teachers are finally saying, hey, if I want to make a life and a home and stay a teacher forever, like the people who inspired me when I was growing up, then it's time for us to stand up and really work for each other and work for our communities to make things better.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Charlie. Well, there's about 10 hours of negotiations ahead of teachers and Denver Public Schools. So we will see, Devin, if in those 10 hours they can reach an agreement and get these teachers back in the classroom.
Micah Smith, thank you for that reporting. Terrific job out there. KMGH, our affiliate in Denver. Great to see Micah. Let's go to Virginia now, where that political stalemate is now stretched into a second week. Embattled Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. You see him there on the left. You see Mark Herring, the Attorney General, on the right. Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, also involved in scandal. Well, there's been no movement on any of those fronts. Ralph Northam vowing to stay on the job and has just announced he's going to take a listening tour across the state to talk about race with various communities. Our Zachary Quiche is in Richmond for us. Zachary, a listening tour. How is that going over down there in the Capitol?
I haven't heard directly how people have been receptive to the actual tour itself. We do know that a lot of people were listening to that interview that he did on Sunday, at what point he referred to the black experience in Virginia as indentured servants. I think that rubbed folks the wrong way in a lot of cases. He isn't necessarily somebody who has exemplified that he understands the black experience in this country, and for some, it seemed to minimize that. I've talked to a number of professors in this space, a number of academics who say, you know, when you really look at the details, there is a delineation there, and depending on the timeline, there is a time that you could call what happened to Africans brought here as indentured servants, but certainly, again, the governor hasn't necessarily exemplified an ability to hit the right tone on a number of these issues. So that will continue. He's calling this his racial reconciliation tour.
And also talking about promoting some policies to back that up. We shall see. No indication he's stepping down. Meanwhile, Zachary, you've been following the scandal surrounding the Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax. Impeachment proceedings were put on hold, but what are you hearing about efforts to investigate him and these 2 allegations of sexual misconduct against him?
Yeah, Devin, I mean, let's start from the beginning here. I mean, the blackface KKK robe photo comes out related to the governor, just as I'm out here talking about the idea that Justin Fairfax, right, the lieutenant governor, a young black man who's Ivy school educated and certainly has an incredible history of his own as the descendant of slaves, just as I'm talking about the ability that he might have to step into this role, these allegations come out. So the first one comes out, dates back to 2004. A woman says that she was forced by Fairfax to perform oral sex, and then days later, I mean, that was damaging, and that certainly deserved attention and investigation. But then just days later from that, a woman came out from his days as an undergraduate student at Duke and said that Fairfax had raped her. And that's really what brings us to where we are now. I mean, it was obviously a big deal. And I want to give you some details related to that. So she says that Fairfax and her were actually friends, and that she had been raped by someone on the Duke basketball team a year prior to this. Now, we've heard from that person, a gentleman by the name of Corey Maggette. ESPN is reporting that Corey Maggette vehemently denies that he had anything to do with this, that this was a rape. And so that makes 2 people, right, Mr. Maggette and Mr. Fairfax, who say these allegations just aren't true. And we're also hearing from Duke. Duke has put out a number of statements, but nothing that necessarily brings any clarity to the issue. They say that they're looking into the issue, but they have not spelled out what was done on their end. And just to give you an idea of what's going on here today, on one side you have Republicans, on the other side you have the Democrats. Their caucus meetings going on, and obviously the elephant in the room on the Democratic side is Justin Fairfax. Devin, back to you.
Yeah, the elephant in the room, and what a stalemate it is. Zachary Quiche, thanks for your reporting down there in Richmond. We'll be back with you, I'm sure, later this week. To Venezuela now, where demonstrators are planning a major protest today in the streets in support of opposition leader Juan Guaido. This as President Nicolas Maduro is blasting the United States as a, quote, gang of extremists, and says he will not allow aid, humanitarian aid, into his country. Our Bruno Rober is staged in Colombia on the Colombia-Venezuelan border, where that aid is positioned. It has been blocked by the Maduro regime from entering the country. Bruno, great to see you. Give us the scene there. What's the situation with the aid, and what's going on behind you?
Well, in essence, what this crisis is all about us here. If I walk around, I'm in Colombia, but we're on the border with Venezuela. And as you can see, they're just hordes of people walking back and forwards. This side, people are coming from Venezuela, coming to buy essential items that they can't buy over there. On this side, people are returning to Venezuela. And this is, in a sense, the crux of the issue here, which is the deprivation that's being experienced by hundreds of thousands of people in Venezuela. Now, both sides of the clash, the battle for the future of Venezuela, are accusing each other of politicizing humanitarian aid, which is being positioned on the border not far from here. In a sense, both are right, really. Both sides are politicizing it. As you said, Nicolas Maduro has said he's not going to let the aid into Venezuela. This is an attempt at interference led by the US and would, in a sense, be tantamount to an invasion. So he's blocking the aid. Meanwhile, the opposition leader, the interim president, Juan Guaido, is saying he's using the aid as a rallying cry for his supporters and has been talking and maybe giving some more details later on today about the idea of having a mass protest to try and bring the aid across themselves. To break the blockade. Is also daring the military to say stop and actually, as it were, shoot or obstruct their own citizens. So there's a lot riding on the humanitarian aid, but at the moment it hasn't moved. Nothing's actually happened. And this is the danger the opposition find themselves in, I think, is that if they don't do something soon, they have to, you know, there's a day Nicolas Maduro can wait them out.
And Bruno, real quickly, a fascinating scene there behind you, a free-flowing border. I'm sort of surprised that both sides don't seem to be controlling human movement in either direction there. Paint a little bit more of a picture of, have you seen any exodus of sorts, of people leaving, fleeing Venezuela, or are they pretty much returning back there to their homes?
No, I mean, there's a flow of people, but there are upwards of 3 million Venezuelans have actually left the country and are living on the borders of Colombia, in Brazil, and other countries in the region. Desperate, so desperate are the situations over there, they'd rather eke out some sort of life. And I don't know if you can see people selling stuff along the side of the road. Many of these people are Venezuelans who are living right here, some of them on the street, trying to eke out some sort of life. And it's better here, and imagine that, than over there in Venezuela. So really desperate. And essentially, this is the core of what this whole battle is about, is the deprivation and the starvation almost of people in Venezuela. I mean, starvation, but certainly difficulties.
Yeah, really a difficult situation to say the least. Bruno Rober, great to have you there on the border of Colombia and Venezuela. Terrific reporting, sir. Thank you. Let's go now to Caracas, where our Cody Weddle has been tracking the protests which are happening today in support of Juan Guaido. It's very loud there in the streets. Cody, set the scene for us. What's happening today in Caracas?
Well, we are seeing these protests here. Tens of thousands of people are marching basically to a stage that is just over my shoulder. We can't see it here, but that's where we expect Juan Guaido once again to come out and speak to folks here and other opposition leaders. And I can still see back this way, there are probably several thousand more people still marching this way. So a massive turnout here once again for this anti-government protest like we've been seeing. And the excitement here really continues. They feel like change really is about to happen. That's even though, as Bruno was saying, nothing has really happened significant over the past few days. They need more defections within the military. They need more signals from people inside the government that they're willing to flip over to Juan Guaido's side. But there still is a sense here that change is coming.
And Cody, there had been so much concern early on when these protests broke out about a potentially violent response from the Venezuelan military. What presence does the Venezuelan military have at these protests? Do you see them? Are they around? And is there any concern about that now?
We have seen some members of the Venezuelan National Police protest. We are in Caracas's east. This is a place that has traditionally been opposition territory. And in other parts of Caracas that traditionally have been more pro-government, we've been seeing that authorities have not been allowing people to gather and march to this place here. So there's certainly a tactic within the government to not allow people in working class areas gather. They will only allow it for now here, and we don't expect this march to turn violent here since they're not planning to march to downtown.
All right, Cody Weddle for us in Caracas, Venezuela. Terrific reporting, Cody. We'll be back with you later this week. Thank you, sir. That's all for the debrief today. Hope you join me later this afternoon for our political show, The Briefing Room, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on ABC News Live. And, of course, join us for World News Prime, 8 p.m. Eastern. And download the ABC News app if you don't have it. Great resource to have in your pocket. I'm ABC's Devin Dwyer in Washington. We'll see you next time. Executed with Cody.
You're gonna do some pages?
What pages am I doing? Remind me.
Audrey said something about if Trump signs the thing, I guess.
Generic toss to Alex and to Karen.